All right, we're here in the brand new pitching lab at the University of Arizona. Still a work in progress. Finishing touches are on the way. I'm lucky to be joined by Kevin Vance, pitching coach here, John DeRoyan, director of pitching here. Guys, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to chat. Really excited. A lot of toys in here, which is the fun part of getting to do stuff like this. It definitely is something I enjoy talking about. Let's start with kind of what's in here. So I know we have TrackMan, we have Kinetrax, we have Edgertronics, we have all the toys. Kind of run through why it's important from a development standpoint to have tools like that.
Right. Well, first of all, I think all these cool tools that we have are here to measure. They're here to make sure we're not guessing on what we're doing. We got to have some feel for what we're doing and watch the guys and see how they move first and figure out what type of mover they are. And we dive deep into that. And then we can hop on the new force, Kinetrax, kind of prove it, show the data, and then break it down with ourselves and with the player and find the lowest hanging fruit, because there's a ton of information in here, millions of dollars worth of pitching tech. And there's a lot, right? It'll tell you a lot of things, and a lot of it doesn't matter for certain guys. So I think the key is being able to find, the lowest hanging fruit or the specific things for each individual, right? There's not just one way to do all of this. And so, yeah, in a lot of ways, it makes our job a little bit more complicated to kind of sift through and then give the right information to each guy. But, we'll get them all in here and start to measure the data so we're not guessing. And then we can, then prove it and show our measurable development throughout the fall and through into the season. And I think that's where, the value in all this is we can prove to ourselves so we become more confident. We can prove to the players, right, that, hey, look at your Kinetrax data here versus here, or look at anything, TrackMan, whatever it is for each guy. And that's the thing, it is different for each guy. So it's about having a structure in place that you can then identify, this is what he needs, this is what he needs, because they're all one adjustment away from making it to the big leagues and like being a big leaguer, right? I think that the talent level we have here is right there. So whether it's the new force that gets a guy to that next jump, or if it's Kinetrax, we don't discriminate based on how we get there. But that's the key, is finding what are those one or two adjustments. Maybe it's a physical adjustment, maybe it's a mental adjustment, pitch design, or a ground force. It's all different, right? And so we will treat every single player and every single tool that we have differently, and always have that mindset in mind.
Yeah, it's a lot. You mentioned that it can be a lot. So before we jump into each specific thing here, talk about the relationship between you two and the communication and how important that is, of the partnership between you guys and translating the information and sifting through it, because you guys got a lot on your plate day to day, even outside of just breaking down this data. There's a lot of things that are involved in being in charge of a pitching staff. What's the relationship like with you guys, and how you go about breaking that down?
I think the dynamic here is cool, where Kevin has coached on field for a while. I've been more in like the performance development space. So I think we attack things from a similar but different lens, but with the same goal in mind, right? And we talk about this, ultimately it always comes back to compete, dominate the zone, win every pitch. Those are our three main pillars at the end of the day. That's our North Star that we're working to. So I think from there we can backtrack and understand, okay, we have, 20 plus pitchers on our pitching staff, right? What do we need to do for each one to get them to the point where they're confident in their abilities to be able to go out and perform at a high level, when the lights are on? Because that's what it goes back to. And I think all these resources, they're pieces to the puzzle, right? We're trying to put that puzzle together. Every guy is their own unique puzzle. So when you're navigating, the development space, you need to be able to digest information and understand, what's going to be the most impactful lever to pull to get a guy to be able to perform at a high level. So I think Kevin and I, our relationship, our ability to communicate, we can really take a 30,000 foot view on every guy and understand, like I said, hey, this guy may need this guy may respond best to this, and then we can formulate the most impactful player plan. And I think that's what it gets back to, is we want to be able to give our players actionable,
things that they can work towards. So for us, being able to work together and communicate and digest all of this allows us to give every guy specifically what they need.
Absolutely. And Kevin,
Yep.
let's talk now. So you get this information, you guys collaborate on it. Is it a guess and check process with these guys? I imagine the tech helps speed up the adjustment process, right? Because like you mentioned, you can now say, look, this is what it looks like. This is what we need it to look like. Kind of what's that next step then? So you collect the data, right? And then you have to put it into action. Is it then like, hey, let's try this one day? And how long do you give it before maybe you scrap that idea and move on to the next thing?
Right. Yeah, every adjustment's different. Again, I know we keep saying that, but we chip away at it every day. So kind of the way that we will program it is we will throw plyos and prescribe certain drills or movements based on what we see in our evals. So yeah, there is a little bit of guessing and trying to see what works. But for the most part, we have so much information, and we just have a feel for, okay, I think he needs to do X, Y, or Z when he's moving, and let's prescribe these specific plyos, and he's going to get better at it every day as long as he's educated on exactly why he's doing it, right? It's not just hey, here's a generic plyo program that we purchased and just had everyone do, right? It's very targeted. There is a base of what we do when it comes to plyos, but everyone kind of has a specific goal in mind when they're doing a med ball throw or a plyo throw, and we kind of just chip away at it every day. And to me, there is no magic pill to, all of a sudden, hey, now you throw 5 miles an hour. Sometimes if you hit the right adjustment, like that happens, and those are the best adjustments as a coach. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff that we've done that hasn't worked, right? And that's the fun part. That's like why all of this is cool. We're going to be able to do that more and maybe get it wrong a couple times, but like the guys they know that we're going to be trying to get the right answer, right? And staying up at night thinking about it. And so, yeah, that is part of it. I think that just comes down to, coaching again, right? Like the trust that the player has in you to try new stuff. And I think they're all open to do that. So, that's my long answer to it's case by case, just like everything.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on that too, I think in the world we're in now, right, in 2024, we're like, it seems like everyone's on one side of the fence, old school, new school, right? And I think with all the information we have, like the best way I think about it is like we always have to be in school, right? You always have to be learning and educating yourself to figure out how you're going to get, each guy better, right? What's that path going to look like? So for us, it's like there's an art to coaching, right? You have to have this Rolodex of information that you can kind of lean into, to be able to build that the most impactful plan. And that's the art of it, right? It's like, there's a lot of people who can sit and dissect information, but then putting together something that can actually make a guy better and yield the results that you want, that's a whole nother process in of itself. So I think that's what Kevin and I talk about a lot. We're breaking down, each guy is like, well, what is this guy going to best respond to? Because there's an art to like literally coaching him, how you're going to talk to him. So I think, Kevin and I, we talk about that a lot. And then having that Rolodex of like, plyo drills, is it going to elicit the response? Does this look better even when we're just at the plyo wall, right? Like we can start to use our eyes and video, even if we're not in this setting, and then come back and like, the ball doesn't lie. Like if we see a guy throwing harder in a pen, chances are we're starting to see things change in terms of movement quality. And then we come back here when we reassess. Now we can validate those changes. So I think that's a lot of it. Is like it's the art of it. It's having that Rolodex of information, understanding how guys are going to best respond, and just like having your process to be able to check along the way. And then you can come back here and really validate if stuff is working.
Let's talk a little bit now about tying this into competing, because at the end of the day, the developing, you're trying to make them better so that you can go out there and compete, throw strikes, and win battles. Let's talk about how you guys go about doing that, taking all this information and turning it into successful outings.
Yeah. Well, I think the unique thing about what we do is we spend a lot of time on the mound. And, like we talk about this, even when we're evaluating data, right? Like your greatest biomechanical disadvantage could be your greatest performance advantage, right? Like, at this level, like we can't quantify deception at the same level as, major league orgs, but you can start to see some common traits that exists. And like, maybe that's why a guy is performing better than what his stuff is. Right. But for us, it's like, we spend a lot of time on the slope. We understand, okay, like not everything, we're not always chasing, output, right? We want guys who can throw harder and have better stuff, but, we may change a guy, right? And that may not necessarily be the best thing for him, right? Like, and we had some cases of that this year, but for us, like when it goes back to performance, like we're spending a lot of time on the slope. We understand what makes each guy unique. And we're trying to maximize that. We need guys to be comfortable in this space on the mound, right? And like, so we do our plyos off the mound. Like we rarely throw flat grounds, right? The only time we're really doing flat ground work is in our catch play. And then from there, our guys come back in and they're on the mound, right? So we're trying to create environments that kind of build on each other, right? So we throw our plyos, we then go into our catch play, then we come back in and we're focusing on executing pitches, right? So we're in these controlled spaces to start, right? And then they slowly become less constrained, right? And then ultimately every day for, majority of our guys, they're doing some work on the slope to somebody down 60 feet, 6 inches away, right? So ultimately, like when we understand who they are, right? And we understand like, what's going to be best for them, we build our programming around that. We make sure we're maintaining what makes them unique. And then we're trying to spend a lot of time in that space so they can just continue to get comfortable with what makes them really good. So that's the big thing for us is like the mound is an important place. And it's not just always looking at things through a pure output lens. It's understanding the implications of maybe changing something, and that may have a negative return for us. So it's dissecting the data, building programming around that to make sure we're getting the best version of each guy.
Yeah, and just to keep it simple for the player, right? We have about an hour every day where we're out here doing our pre-throw work and our plyos and then our catch play. So the progression every day really is on the back end, me and John are diving into the data, into the Kinatrax information, and then building out the most simple and best plan for them every day. So the progression that they go through is when they get there, they have specific primers that are going to get them to move the way that they want. Specific plyos that are going to get them to move the way they want. And that's all they're focused on at the beginning is it's right here. It's very, mechanical based or whatever you want to call it, right? Thinking about how they can improve how they're moving. But then every single day that shifts more and more into competition. So as you get further back in your catch play, the focus starts to shift into, I need to get dudes out on the mound, right? And then on the way in, it's even more of that. They're not focused on how they're moving anymore, right? So being able to compartmentalize as a player and as a coach, right? That's going to set them up with a simple structure of these movements are going to help me move the way I want. I'm focused on that right now. I'm going to transition it into catch play. That's going to, make it more dynamic and still focus on how you're moving. But then as the day progresses and you start to move in, it's how do I execute? I'm not thinking about how I'm moving anymore. I'm being athletic because we just trained ourselves to then not think about it, right? And so when it comes to the game, that's the key, right? It is getting to that. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not thinking about what my right eyelid is doing on Kinatrax while at ball release, right? But we're going to break that down and look at it. But for the player, this is where I want to throw this pitch. I'm going to throw it in maybe this area here. Yep. I'm going to be really aggressive with it. And I'm going to trust it 100% conviction because that's what it all comes back to at the end of the day is win every pitch. I say it almost every day. Go out there, go be yourself. We've taught you who you are. You know who you are because of all these things that we do. So then they're confident in who they are and in themselves, and they can just go out, compete, be themselves. And then it's just one pitch at a time. There's no other way to do it. That's what baseball is winning every pitch. And, so we got to simplify it so they know exactly, it's a simple mindset with a lot of info on the back end, but kind of sifting through that and giving them 3 to 4 specific things that they can focus on, right, to help them move better. And, the arsenal will get better on its own. And then at the end of the day, it's, we're focused every day on getting guys out at the end of every day, right? Yep. So the day is compartmentalized and it's a progression every day.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about the Kinatrax now. Walk me through kind of how it works a little bit, what you're looking for, and why it's so useful for you guys in this process.
Right.
Yeah, I think. I think for us, right? Like, the cool part about having a stadium system and a lab system, right, is like the game is so variable, right? So how we organize in a game, may be a little bit different than what we're doing in a more controlled space in a lab. So I think one, in that sense, it allows us to compare, right? Like, okay, is a guy, when a hitter gets in the box, what changes, right? And like, maybe we need to backtrack in terms of programming strategies to say, like, are we really making, the most impact in terms of what we're doing? Are the environments we're giving this guy the most impactful? So I think, like, first and foremost, having both systems just allows us to just be more precise in what we're doing and really evaluate what matters, which is the game, right? Like, and we talk about this too, like, we had a couple of guys this year whose average velo really shot up, right? And that's what matters, because that's sustainable. And that's your average velo from mid-February till, our season ended in June. So, that's the biggest thing, is like when we're talking about improving output, improving the ability to execute at a high level, creating more impactful pitch shapes, right? We want to be able to do that at a sustainable level over the course of the entirety of the year, right? So when we can evaluate in-game data, it allows us to say, hey, on March 15th, this is what was going on. Maybe we saw some regression in velo. Is it something that's noteworthy? Is it something for us that we, hey, we need to be quick to action and work on this right now? Or is it just like, hey, we just need to monitor it?
Right.
So I think for us, like, having data tracks in the stadium just allows us to track trends and be quicker to impact if we need to be. And then we can come in here in the lab setting and, like, we can start to tie more things in, right? Like, we can use our force plate mount. We can be a little more, like, we can take it a little bit slower, and we can actually, like, work through some things and break it down with the player. But I think the game, like, it's a huge evaluation tool. And every guy's going to be a little bit different, right? Like, you're getting so many discrete metrics from Kinatrax. You're getting, joint angles, velocities, rotational speeds, right? You can start to look at range of motion, right? There's so many different things that are going on. And, fatigue sets in, right? Like, movement quality maybe changes. And, we can start to look at some, compare guys to themselves, compare the guys to normative major league ranges, right? And be able to evaluate over time, okay, is stuff changing? Are we consistent? Are we in a good spot? Because that's impactful too, right? Like, is understanding if a guy is in a really good spot, we just need to keep him where he's at. So it's huge for us to have both systems.